Hey guys, it's Matt. This is the next evolution of the Ship of Fools discussion. The Ship of Fools is mentioned maybe 10 times in the book, but there is no specific page or section explaining what it is. The reason for this presentation is we know more about it. We see now we did not go far enough, whatever it was, 4 years ago. When I was like, there's this thing called the Ship of Fools, and there's like a mechanism that brainwashes people that are on it, like a download. And then the other names we used are, they're on, your friends are on the radio station or on the frequency. Well, as usual, we didn't go far enough. It's worse. It's worse than we thought. And then there's also segmentation inside the Ship of Fools. You have further ships sailing inside the ship. Like, well, we'll just call it the alphabet letters. I don't know what I can talk about. There's a variety of different Ship of Fools pictures or placeholder images that come and go during this presentation. If you're driving or you're at work, you don't need to see them. The first round comes from Shatan, who he had, remember, set me up via his AI artwork. He set me up looking like Temujin, windswept Temujin from the Mongolian steppe. So we'll use his first. And Bill, right now, Bill is calling, what was the end of Caddyshack? Moose, Rocco, have the judge find his checkbook. Right now, Bill is who does our posters for us is calling Moose and Rocco, sending them over to my house. Bill, your Ship of Fools image is last, and everybody should see that because it's funny. There's a lot of things going on. And I'm not saying that Bill's all upset because we're not showing his. What he gets upset about is the AI art. He doesn't care if his is shown. He just doesn't want me dabbling in any way with the Ouija board. But these Ship of Fools images are so perfect for what we're going to talk about. The people on boards look so lost. I like Shatan's images here. Shatan also has creepy table images that will feature sometime. So real quick, if anybody's new, the original concept, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, the Ship of Fools on the River of Insanity. It was a way of creating a mental picture of why we are different than your friends and family. What is going on here? And what is the mechanism or the technology at play? What makes us different? So it's like your friends and your family. Why don't they see what we see? Why can't they just see through the ridiculous presentation of politics and the millions of things that separate us from them? So it's like they're on the ship, but we've dived off the ship, swam to the shore. As the ship sails away, they get further and further apart from us in terms of how we see and interpret reality. But no matter how crazy it looks to us, which means if you graph it out on an X and a Y, how far the ship sails down the river of insanity, it's like living inside a gigantic Mandela effect because it seems normal to them to a degree. They might complain, the conservatives might complain that a kid under 10 should not be allowed to decide which one it wants to be on Tuesday and which one it wants to be on Wednesday. They'll complain, but it's not completely abnormal the way their adversary or the other side is reacting. They're all sailing on the ship together, and it's like it's like a download. It's like a mind control. It's like a frequency or a radio station, where as things get more and more insane, they sort of reset to it. It could be metaphysical per reality itself, like a Mandela effect, but I don't want to trigger anybody. Maybe it's just mind control or literally a technology we don't understand. The good news is we are immune to it. If you're immune to it, that means you have dived off the back of the Ship of Fools. Of course, almost all of us were on the Ship of Fools at one point, just some later than others. So the difference between me and Greg, for example, on the big day in 2001, when the specific 7-Eleven job application was submitted, Greg gets out of a test. Nobody knew what was going on. It was like this monitored test. He was taking classes that his work was paying for. And he comes out, it's on TV, and he's like immediately telling people, that can't happen. Where I, for years, believed every bit of it. I remember talking, and I try to get back into that mindset. What was the mindset when I was on the Ship of Fools? I try to remember, what was I receiving a frequency, or what was the difference? I remember that one of the big conversations was one I had with my cousin where as soon as we started, one of the characteristics that I remember when being on the Ship of Fools myself, when we tried to, or when we questioned something or said, this looks a little funny, one of us, mostly my cousin, because, I was always probably inclined to be a little bit further off the ship than most people. We have tendencies, or who we are as people, how we resonate. I was probably hanging on the rails even then. I probably questioned more than most, but technically I was still on the Ship of Fools. So my cousin and I were talking. We shared that apartment and the rent in San Francisco. And why would it just go to nothing, like to, the dust type thing? We're talking about that. I remember clearly. And he said, well, I read about that, and it created the force of a nuclear weapon. My cousin goes on to tell me what he read about, and Matt, it wasn't a normal collapse. It shouldn't look like a normal, because the forces that were created, I read about it, and I remember the explanation. Maybe I was just desperate to have that explanation make sense to me, but it was completely satisfying to me. I just never thought about it again. Okay, it looked a little funny. My cousin said the forces created because of the size of the building, it was unprecedented in history, created a force like a nuclear weapon. And then all questioning just kind of went away. It was so willing, maybe that's part of the characteristics or what's going on with people on the Ship of Fools, was so willing to latch on to any normal explanation that somebody could give me, any explanation that wouldn't upset my reality bookends, or we'd say that would come from that same toy box. I remember the conversation, and I remember just being completely satisfied. Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, George Stephanopoulos, when he's down there, he talked about, what did he say? He said it evaporated. That's George, if you're listening to me, that's only a process where water becomes vapor and goes back into the air. It doesn't apply to concrete, steel, wood chips, plastics. It can't evaporate, George, but he kept his job, and he was actually promoted into $1 million a year job, of course, because as all minions are. But my cousin didn't say that, but he said the forces, and I went, oh yeah, that's what it was. So it's like, wow, why was I so willing to accept that? What mechanism was affecting me when I was on the Ship of Fools? But going back to how I started this segment, the difference between, say, Greg and myself, Greg's talking about it that morning as that can't happen, where for me, no questioning at all until 2006 or so. Then the YouTube videos, 2007, dove into it, of course, but for years, at least 5 years, no, it's exactly what Time Magazine said happened. I'm honest. We were all on the Ship of Fools at some point. But one thing we know about the Ship of Fools now that Greg certainly didn't have access to in 2001, or I didn't, or you didn't potentially even 5 years ago, we know that if somebody is on the ship, they simply can't see what we can see, and they never will be able to, never, as long as they're on the ship. That is the key, as long as they're on the ship. Now, maybe, we could create another mental image where maybe they're trying to understand, or if they hang their head over the railing, the frequency's not beaming in as hard, and they're not just going to just dive off for no reason. At some point, people start questioning, they start asking questions, or talking to a friend that has a certain belief set. Maybe they hang their head over the railing, and then that the fog clears a little bit. But if they exhibit characteristics that they are on the middle of the ship, there is no chance they will ever see what we see, no matter how ridiculous it is. What could be more ridiculous than the next day after the mall event, school event, a smiling and quite pleasant Robbie Bibby. What could be more? There was nothing you more need to see than that. There couldn't be any more ridiculous presentation than that. Just, it's not possible. So if somebody can't see that, they can't see anything. As soon as somebody starts to defend reality, they're the palace guard, start making excuses for it, then they're on the ship. There's no point. It doesn't matter. See, this is something we couldn't wrap our head around maybe even 5 years ago. It doesn't matter how ridiculous the presentation is or how bad their, quote, mistake on purpose is. Those on the ship, whatever the download is, the frequency, the radio station, the metaphysical mechanism, whatever it is, they can't see it. And now that we're finally understanding this, it is almost like a burden off our back, because my biggest frustration, of course, nothing compares to this for me, is why I couldn't share what was so obvious to me with other people. So now we understand, and in understanding, it is, at least for me, it's like a weight has lifted, or a burden is no longer there. It's just much, much easier to bear, knowing there's a mechanism at play here. We don't know exactly what it is, why somebody on the ship is so blind, but we know it exists at this point. Some say it's a technology. Some calls it a Kaiser blade. I calls it a sling blade. It doesn't matter. Some say it's a spell, a brainwashing, or like a Mandela effect. We have different explanations for why those on the ship are so blind via what we interpret reality to be at this point. But we know it's something. There's no doubt about it at this point. And that makes me not eager to run up to somebody and try to talk to them or try to convince them, because I am fully resigned that if they are on the ship and exhibit characteristics of being towards the middle of the ship, there is no point to it. Some take the invasion of the body snatchers approach. There's something, it's a parasite. We have a lot of different explanations for why you are different from your best friend on the ship. But knowing there's a real reason for it. It could be, we could just do a whole video on the possible reasons. Remember, Matt, their higher selves won't allow them to wake up at this point. Their higher selves, their own self, spiritual self, will brainwash them and not, you guys are an anomaly. You guys can see right through reality. So reality, what do I say, like a Philly, wow, you can see right through reality. So everything looks ridiculous to us at this point. They're not ready. Maybe they have 1,000 lifetimes left, or we don't know, but they're just not ready. So some say their oversoul or their higher self or whatever just won't let them. It doesn't have to always be a sinister reason, although studying these creeps said that's more than likely, but we know it's something. So I don't feel the same burden anymore that why am I so alone? It's actually a very positive. Yeah, we are so alone on the bank. That's the most wonderful thing of all time. You know how special that is, that perception? And of course, anybody stumbling upon this video would think we're out of our minds, just madmen. So let me get this straight. You guys, this little tiny group, you see right through reality, but nobody else can see it. And you guys, you do yourselves admit that you're conspiracy people, and you're all right about all this stuff and dark forces, and have you ever, there's a lot of online therapy available. Of course they would see it that way, but their side is not equal to ours anymore. It's not possible. They defend, one last time, a parent. I don't know what this thing is. He approached a podium the day after with smiles. They'd say, Matt, everybody responds to grief differently. Not with smiles and no tears. It's not even worth talking about it. No, our side or our position is not equally just as the other, I assure you. But one thing I'm starting to notice about the ship, I don't even know how to talk about this, it's very hard to present. It has to do with the concept of this is the era of further segmentation into smaller and smaller camps. This is what reality does. So each camp finds a way to see how they're different from the other, so they fight with each other. They war amongst each other. They're at odds with each other. The more camps it can create, this reality, the more chance of infighting. It maybe just simply so it can harvest that sort of loose energy. But we used to see the ship as one ship. Of course, there were differences on the ship, Republican and Democrat, but they're on the same ship of fools, both equally fooled. But reality has created so many different camps. It's like on the general ship of fools, if you look at it, there's like 1,000 or 20,000 ships sailing in different directions. It's ships within ships within ships. It's that same Russian nesting dolls idea. So if we were to take a look at it, we don't want to get too close to it. We've dived off the back, but maybe we could take a drone, fly a drone over top of the ship of fools. And it appeared to us when we dived off, it was just one ship of idiots. But now we look, it's like the Pacific Princess has been converted into just a gigantic swimming pool. It's a pool inside of a ship. Isaac's bar is down the end, but on the pool, in the pool, is 1,000 different ships. It's further and further segmentation. I'll give you an example. Again, when we dived off, they're all the same idiot. But now, like, look at the alphabet group. The alphabet group is so over the top, so in your face, so offensive, not just to those off the ship, but even those on the ship. So this is not coming out right. Look, in the old days, you're a Republican on the ship. Okay, your liberal Democrat would be that person's adversary. But it's not like it would be completely alien, that ship, if you're on the ship of fools. Oh, these people are lost. They have a misguided belief set, but she kind of understood it. I'm saying now, like, even on the ship, one ship looks alien to the other, but they're all on the same ship of fools. They don't realize that. But again, the endless presentation of the alphabet group, it's so over the top, it's almost like becoming a reality breakdown. Greg sent me a link of some sort of presentation that happened at Dodger Stadium about Sesame Street sponsored by the letter T. And you just wonder, like, how is this sort of a display, how does it even happen before a baseball game? I don't know how to even talk about it. Who approves it? How is it approved? What download are they on? Or what goes through people's heads? Look, it's a baseball game. Chavez Ravine. You know the type of group with Sesame Street sponsored by the letter T that was making some sort of display or presentation before the Dodgers game. Or we know why this is, to create more hatred among groups, more loose energy. We know that. We'll talk about that later. But what goes through the minds of the people that work in the Dodgers front office, the general manager, his executive or her executive staff? Because it's not, again, Sesame Street sponsored by the letter T. It's not a somewhat respectable group that is, looks somewhat presentable, saying these are our demands and we would hope you would be more, understanding of where we're coming from. No, it's this. You understand the group that I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about here, but gigantic flowing robes, or huge purple hair and huge lipsticks and 18-inch high heels, and it's like the opening 20 minutes of The Birdcage with Robin Williams, that is very difficult for Red State America to watch. I mean, that is so over the top, so flamboyant. But what is being presented now with a certain segment of the Sesame Street sponsored by the letter T community makes the opening 20 minutes of The Birdcage look tame, look like nothing. The types, and you think, okay, if this is showing up in a certain segment or section of San Francisco, fine. How does this happen before a Dodgers baseball game? And of course, if you can back up as far as you and I do, we can see it's to create the controversy. It's all to create the groups hating the other groups and to suck the loose and the negative energy and to create the camps hating the other camps. Oh, we can see that because outside the Dodger Stadium, you have over 1,000 mostly Catholic protesters, because what the display of the certain sponsored by letter T group inside, they actually do things with Catholic crosses, and they actually brought the blasphemy into it. I mean, okay, then you have 1,000 people outside, that are just fuming mad about the group presentation inside. Okay, fine. We can easily see. It's to create this controversy. This is what reality does. Your best friend will never be able to see it. It's obvious to us. But what's most fascinating to me is, again, the Dodgers or the Phillies or the Philadelphia Eagles or the Dallas Cowboys, it's not just athletes, okay? There's a whole executive staff, and I don't know if they still wear suits and ties, but it's that sort of in offices. It's that sort of environment. What goes on at that level that allows or justifies this sort of a presentation? So it's more likely it is the mechanisms we talk about, like the download or the frequency or the radio stations. In the old days, all we could come up with is, Well, Matt, those executives in Dodger Stadium, that wear the suits and ties and that do all the money deals and the business office, they don't want to do this, but the creepy phone rings and it's the creepy people at the table and it's always secret societies and that doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work anymore. The behavior of tens of thousands of people, and this is just what we see in the news or on television, is so bizarre in their decision-making progress. It's the opposite of progress in their decision-making process. That getting the call from the secret society, it's the Brotherhood. Come on, man, come on, sir. It's like the nothing in the Never-Ending Story, the book and the movie, the Never-Ending Story. It's like the nothing. This thing just creeps over reality, creeps over the world. I forget if it turns to black or just to vague or blurry. You go up in your dragon, riding your dragon. The kid's riding the dragon around like half the continent is missing. It creeps. This thing is like the nothing. I don't know how to talk about it. It's just so bizarre. Look, because it's now creeped into baseball games. See what I'm saying? That's the endless creep. My cousin, who I talked about earlier, before I moved to San Francisco, he had worked for maybe 4 or 5 years for the San Francisco Giants baseball team. He was responsible for the advertising in the Giants magazine. The old days, you'd go to like a football game and there'd be a program. Let's get a program. And it was like a little magazine. You'd see the rosters and there'd be little ads in there for Coca-Cola or local vendors. I don't know if they did it every game or once a week or once a month. There was this Giants magazine. People would advertise in it. So he worked up in the stadium. There were executive offices. Again, there's a whole executive crew, suit and tie and all that. I'll tell you a quick story, 1 minute or less, where they said to the executive staff, we have a celebrity coming in tonight, and you've got to spend an extra couple hours, hang out after you're done work. You've got to go to the game, but you're gonna walk this celebrity around. Get babysitting role, basically. And well, who is it? Who's coming? Cindy Crawford. At the height of her, Cindy, my cousin's like, I'll do it. He raised his hand. He said, okay, Mike, meet her here. She has a whole trailer come in, their makeup and all this stuff. 45 seconds or less. He knocks on the door. She's all ready to go. Okay, it's an hour before or 45 minutes before you throw out the first pitch, Cindy. Well, we have 45 minutes to kill. What do you want to do? I want to go see Barry Bonds. I want to meet Barry Bonds. You want to meet Barry Bonds? Oh, I can see that. So he leads her around. They go down into the locker room. Can Barry come out, put a towel on or whatever? She wants to meet Barry Bonds, and so they shake hands or whatever. So my cousin was a babysitter, takes her to where she needs to be on the field. She throws the first pitch out, gets in her trailer, goes home. Okay, that's something. What's the point here, Matt? That's something before a baseball game that kind of makes sense. What if they said to him, we're going to have this Sesame Street sponsored by the letter T, flowing robes, overly masks, flamboyant, 18-inch high heels. I mean, all this that makes the opening 15 minutes of the Birdcage look like nothing. How did the nothing from the Never-Ending Story, how did that creep into baseball? When will it ever stop? And, okay, there are people in the ship of fools that they are almost in their protest, almost violently pushing back on it. However, they don't realize, of course, the reality games that are being played here to harvest energy. There's many ships now floating around the giant pool was once the Pacific Princess, but on it's further and further segmentation, further and further camps, and how much more can it do? It's mind-boggling. It's fascinating. I mean, the people that are protesting it, they have no idea as we would interpret it or how we would interpret it. But there's got to be an end to it, right? I mean, this type of presentation before a baseball game. And again, my fascination is what goes on. If my cousin was still I could call him up. Like, I would love if he still worked for the Giants and I could call him up. I might still call him up I haven't talked to him for a long time, and say, how could this possibly be allowed before a baseball game? Not that much different. Nancy Pelosi throughout. Well, a lot different, but not much different. Nancy Pelosi apparently, I don't know, a week ago or something, or 2 weeks ago, threw out the first pitch at the Washington Senators? Is that the name of the baseball team? Greg sent me an image just because there's nobody, like in protest, there's nobody in the stands. Well, that's a little different. Politics, Speaker of the House, it's not this opening 20 minutes of the birdcage times a million. But still, what goes through the executives at the Washington? Okay, again, it's Matt. You're not comparing some little T group, with one of the most powerful people to ever walk around Washington, D.C. Maybe she made a phone call and said, I want to throw out the first pitch and you don't have a choice. Okay, I hear you. But if anything were real, they'd be like, well, we don't want Nancy throwing out the first pitch, because that would, any normal person in the executive office would say that creates a division amongst our fans. Anybody normal in the executive office in Washington Senators would say, we're just here to play baseball. We don't care about your politics. We don't want to bring one of the most polarizing political figures into the stadium. We just want to play baseball. That's what would happen in a normal world. I paused for a minute and I was thinking, well, I mentioned a few minutes back, my cousin was working for a baseball team and I should talk to him. And again, what am I doing? Like, why would I say that? What's the point? I mean, anybody on the ship of fools, the same sort of excuses will be made, the same defenses for reality, same defense attorney for reality. I mean, I can just picture it now. I can hear it. Well, Matt, I lived in California basically my whole life, and you don't realize the political power and clout that these groups have. And if they want to make a presentation before a baseball game, Matt, it would be very hard for them to stop them. He would have an excuse. He'd have a script of some kind. Of course, why bother? Where that doesn't, I don't buy it. In a normal world, the general manager of the Dodgers carries some clout. And if there was one little bit of normalcy left in the world, the end of the never-ending story, Bastian, as there's one little grain of sand, the little child princess says, as long as there's one grain of sand left, through your imagination, Bastian, you can bring it all back. And I don't want to give too much away. Is spoilers possible for a 48-year-old movie? So as long as there's one grain of common sense, then the general manager of the Dodgers would be able to say, you know what? We just play baseball here, and we don't get involved in anything that is polarizing, that where one of our groups of fans could see things differently than the other. We just don't do it here. You know what we do? We play baseball. If there was one grain of normalcy left in the world, you couldn't push back on that. You'd say, well, okay, we wanted our little Sesame Street sponsored by the letter T group in here. You won't allow it. Okay. I might leak some press that you're phobic in that, but don't leak press that we're phobic. We don't do that here. We play baseball. It's not just your group we're not allowing in. We're not doing MAGA Day either. We're not doing Trump MAGA Day either here. We don't do it. We play baseball. It's the one bastion left. If anything was real in the world, they would say it's the one bastion where we don't play these games, where we don't do it here. It's a baseball game. So it would still be strong enough an argument, even in this crazy reality, to hold up. People in the business office of the Dodgers, they have to be on some sort of download or frequency or mind control or mechanism or spell or all the different possibilities. They'd have to be to allow what went on. Okay, guys, I paused for a minute. I remember Greg told me all about it, but I thought, okay, what is so offensive? I kind of had forgotten. So I went out and I looked and, okay, at Chavez Ravine, Dodgers baseball, I don't know, a few days ago, a week ago, you could look it up. It's all over the news if you want to. I suggest you don't. Just take my word for it. Okay, it's Pride Night. Okay, everybody does it, whatever. Okay, that's to be almost expected now. But they allowed in, it was called satirical nuns. Okay, it's men as Catholic nuns with the huge makeup, just as I said earlier, the opening 10 minutes of the birdcage times a million, huge false eyelashes. Okay, in as nuns, and then they do things with crosses. Now, how did that possibly make it through the business office? Now, we know what the reality one last time in Not Nilk goes out to do. It loved the fact, the Not Nilk reality loved the fact that there were 1,000 mostly Catholic protesters outside and just with signs and very, very upset. Okay, well, that's to be expected. It's not just an over-the-top P presentation. It's from their perspective blatantly blasphemous, of course. So, okay, fine. From an energy harvesting perspective or Not Nilk's need for loosh, what happened before this Dodger game couldn't be any better from its perspective, of course. From 100,000 feet looking down, we see what's going on. But again, I'll just say it one more time because I'm not getting anywhere. How does this get through the Dodgers business office, the office of the general manager, whoever the executive staff is that's responsible for who's going to throw out the first pitch? Or in the old days, it was just, Toby Keith or whatever. It was just some country star. Now it's evolved into this. I don't think they threw out the first pitch, but it was a ceremony or a celebration related to P month, this month, and it was before the Dodgers game. Okay, but how does that... someone say, sir, yeah, you're our intern, right? Yeah. The group that's part of our presentation before the game that nobody wants, that nobody's, the seats were empty, of course. You're just pissing off all our fans anyway. But do you know this group, they dress as Catholic nuns, and it's overly flamboyant with huge eyelashes and lipstick, and then they do things that it's very offensive. That's okay. We're going to do whatever the organizers of P month want. How does that get through the damn business office? How far has the download gone? This is just fascinating to me. And then this guy, Scott Wiener, keeps popping up. I think he's a congressman or senator, a state senator, I believe. I'm not going to look it up. I don't care. He's a government official inside the state of California. I believe his name is Scott Wiener, just like Anthony Weiner. Now, he's popping up all over the place as like the enforcer. Well, Matt, does he look like Stone Cold Steve Austin in his heyday or something, but running around with no shirt and leather pants or whatever? No, he doesn't look intimidating like that, but in a way he does. There's a creepy feeling I get with this individual that Nancy Pelosi, a few others, it's that same sort of creepy vibe that really disturbs me. Now, he's popping up all over, like a handler kind of. It's weird. I'm not going to get to the bottom of it here, but Greg had sent me this other video where the manager of the Dodgers, it's almost like he's just saying his script, almost like he has to. It was a little bit of a struggle for him, it seemed like. He has his Dodgers hat on with the big D is, various colors. Let's just put it like that. They have a special hat created for the day, or it was probably just for the day, not for the month, where this group of the certain type of nuns are going to make their little presentation or get their little award before the game. Of course, as these people come out onto the field, of course, they show the stadium. Nobody in the stadium. So, of course, the entire executive staff, Dodgers executive staff sees they're pissing off all their fans, but that doesn't matter anymore. What do the executives that are below Kathleen Kennedy, what do they say at Disney when they go to the water cooler saying, about their own company? Why are we doing this time and time again? Why are these woke themes and this social justice warrior stuff continuing to be pushed? Every one of them is on the download, maybe. Matt, you assume there's 1,000 employees at Disney that are all talking amongst themselves saying, why are we doing this? Why is the company being destroyed on purpose? And you assume there's 15 people in the executive office of the Los Angeles Dodgers saying, how could we possibly have allowed this group to get do some sort of a presentation before the game or get an award or whatever they did? You're assuming, Matt, they're all on the download. They would have to be. Again, guys, I don't get out much anymore. I would love nothing more than to waltz into the Dodgers executive staff and to sit down and interview and say, how did this happen? Is there anybody that objected to it? They might just say, well, why would you ask me that? What would you say your name was, Matt? What's the problem with what was presented before the game the other night? The download, maybe it has to be that strong. I don't understand it. I get out just to buy milk and eggs and I don't go out much. So, but it has to be the download, the frequency of the radio station would have to be continuously turned up. The dial keeps getting turned up because the presentations that reality is making is just getting more and more over the top. And I know I can hear you, and I'm saying the same thing. Where will it end? When will it stop? What if I told you or you told me 20 years ago that before a baseball game there would be, first of all, a whole monthly celebration and all that stuff? We would say that's not going to ever become part of baseball. But no, a group of, sponsored by the letter T, nuns, men. But I would say that just can't happen in this world, not in my lifetime. 20 years ago, I would say that just can't happen. in the old reality prior to the big 7-Eleven job application, it probably couldn't. Who knows? They did something to reality initiated by that 7-Eleven job application. We'll talk about that some other time. So just to close before looking at Bill's poster, my biggest fascination is if I could, let's say I met 10 Disney workers, they were out at a bar and they've had some drinks and they, would any of them say, yeah, Matt, I'll tell you, just say you didn't hear this from me. We don't like what's going on here. Is there any sense of normalcy in the workers? That is fascinating to me. Or I met these 10 Disney employees, they've had 5 shots, so they're going to just, spill there's nothing they're going to hold back because of the alcohol they've been drinking. They would just say, as if they were on a lie detector, say, well, what could possibly be wrong with what we're putting out? See, we don't understand that we're the Disney creative crew. We don't understand why the world doesn't want the woke themes. And who knows? Would a few of them say, Matt, we really don't understand our own company anymore? Or would everybody from top to bottom be on that download? Who knows? I don't get out enough to say. And most of us in this community don't. I mean, it's very, very few. Even Bill was in these stores. He ran with these groups. In what he did in his past, he knows famous people and rock singers. But it seems we all get far removed in terms of once we see the world a certain way. I doubt, he would. Maybe he does have something to share in this regard, so he'll probably comment. But all right, let's look at Bill's poster, and also there was one other. Back, I think I just want to give a credit. It was from, I believe it was from Radar Love. Her Ship of Fools was more of the ship sailing away. The others were from Shatan. This one's from Bill. Starting at the top and going to the right, clockwise. Enter to win your out-of-this-world dream vacation on the SS Ship of Fools. Sailing soon. Okay, Bill. Now, it's sailed from our perspective, 2023. It has sailed. So this is sailing soon. Do we have a time? Does anybody want to comment with a time for the Ship of Fools? Was it initiated during the big day in 2001? Matt, somebody would say, no. When Walter Cronkite is out there in Vietnam and Hanoi reporting on the Vietnam War, the entire war, per the Gulf of Tonkin incident, was cooked. I mean, some would say the Ship of Fools has always been here. It's always sailed. Is there like a Mandela effect? You say there's no date of change. Is there a date where it set sailed or it became so obvious? To me, I would always put almost everything back to the big day in 2001. I think the Ship of Fools has always, to a degree, been here. But whatever they initiated there, it went on steroids times a million. So reading bottom right, and by the way, Bill's sense of humor is more warped than even mine is. It says, life's short. You've got to grab the bull by the horns to get ahead in this world. Ship of Fools will serve your every desire as you're distracted 24/7 with miles of food at our endless buffet of surf and turf. To the left. Is she sitting on the pot? No, thank God. Don't think about it too long, or someone else will win your spot on the Ship of Fools sailing soon. Ship of Fools off to the left. I don't know what he has. There's a lot of stuff going on in that coin. I'll turn the resolution up on this a bit. And he's got the ship. The ship itself is labeled Ship of Fools on the back and on the side. And a certain, how certain flags fly. Is it a ship from France or from Spain or from the this ship is flying the most appropriate flag of all off the back. Thanks, Bill. Thanks to Shatan and Radar Love for the images, and I will be back as soon as I can with Chapter 3.